Hello, and welcome to the metaphysical universe. Today I will be diving deep with Dominique O'Gorman. She's a practicing medium and psychic. She connects those who are beyond with those who are still of this world, helping them to find answers, closure, and to begin their paths to healing. She's also a death worker or certified death doula. She advocates getting really comfortable being uncomfortable with all things death and grief. So let's get right into this interview. Hello and welcome. I'm so glad that you're here today, Dominique.
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, I'm so excited about deep diving with you today because there's so many things that I want to ask you and talk about. So let's just dive right in. So first of all,
Good.
tell me a little bit about you and a little bit about what you do.
Okay, so my name is Dominique. I'm a medium and a psychic, and I'm also a death worker. So we connect those that have crossed over with those still living in this world. But as a certified death doula, we also help people advocate for their own death and grief and end of life. So we help people transition before, during, and after their death.
Mm,
So that's kind of what we do. I think
wow.
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love that. So, I mean, that's how did you even get into something like this?
I was born being able to connect to the other side. I've always been able to do it since I was really small, and luckily, my mom was super supportive. My two grandparents were super supportive. As far as the death doula part of it, my mother did a lot of end of life care for people in their homes.
Mm,
And as a little girl and as a single mom, she just dragged me with her.
yeah.
So being around death was very normal to me. And I realized by the time I was a teenager, like what sacred work it was and like
Mm,
what honored space it is. And it just kind of fell into my already death connection, I guess you could say, connecting to the other side.
mm.
So I think it was just another step in the space of honoring death and honoring the transition from this life to the next life.
It's funny too because I have a very similar experience. So my
Mhm.
my dad used to do that. He used to work with people who were dying,
Ah,
and he would bring me with them. And I remember being a little kid and going in
yeah.
and hanging out with them. And one lady was like, here, try my food and see what it tastes like. And I just remember it was like so salty and but they were all very sweet, and I loved that he did that work.
Yeah, it's such a unique I think it's such a cool unique experience to be part of because dying is something we will all experience but nobody wants to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think when we talk about it and are introduced to it at a young age, it takes the taboo off of it. It
Hmm.
makes it where we can have these conversations and it makes it easier, as we go. Everybody's going to lose someone. We're all going to die eventually.
Right.
But I always thought it was so much fun. I didn't realize these people were about to die or they knew they were about to die when I was small. So I would just go over and like help my mom like mop their floors, go play with their dogs in the yard and
Hmm.
no big deal. But you get to find out what people are really made of their last few days, weeks, months. You
Yeah.
really find out, you hear their stories that are absolutely life changing that unless you're facing your own mortality, you don't really grasp, and
Hmm.
you get to hear these really cool experiences. And I'm so grateful for every one of them. Absolutely so grateful.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. So how is it that you like, what am I trying to ask here? um you obviously, I'm guessing, like, felt called to do this. Like, how did you know that this was something that you were supposed to do?
So honestly, my heart and soul, and I know for a fact my soul's purpose is as a medium. Like I know that.
Mm,
Um, the psychic thing just kind of comes with it. Not all psychics are medium, but normally most mediums are
yeah.
psychics. So as a medium, I've always just kind of felt really comfortable around it and understanding the transition. I think it kind of happened by accident when I decided to become certified as a death worker. I had a client that I had had for a few months prior to her passing. And then after her passing, she came to me when I was having a session with somebody that had nothing to do with her family. I think she just kind of like found the door in and
Mm,
was like, "Oh, let me do this." And I realized, "Oh, there's a connection. Like I can totally incorporate both of these." And the first time I sat down with my personal first death doula client, not with somebody else or as like an assistant, I realized how important it is and how much ease it helps this individual transition when you can sit down, hold that space for them, let them have their own say in how they want to cross over and how they want to make this transition. And when we finally take that step and we allow that space, everybody around us is like a little bit calmer with it.
Yeah.
And even with the family that are freaking out, because there's always ones that totally freak out, we're able to be an advocate for the individual that's passing over. And that is very, 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 very important to me. When my dad passed away, I'm not his biological child. I was the adopted child very, very late in life. So he had a daughter that was 60, and at the time I was only 30. And I was like, this is what he wants. And I seen like he needed a voice for people to stand up for him. And so when we're able to do that, I think it's really important, because this is the last part of their life. They deserve to do what they want to do, but we don't always feel okay telling our children and our loved ones, this is what I want. I don't want to do it your way. So
Yeah.
it's a cool way to advocate for people. It's really special, I think.
I love that. And I completely understand because, my father passed recently, just last summer. And like he did not want to be in the hospital at all. He just wanted to die at home. But the challenge with that though is that acknowledging that that's the path at that point, because so many people in that moment like don't want to accept like, okay, now this person is like gonna die,
You're
and
making
that
a choice. Yeah.
and you're making that choice. And so like when and his passing was not the best scenario, but
Right. I can
yeah,
like
you can, yeah,
feel it. I can feel it in here. It's
yeah,
it's it's a lot.
yeah. It was a year's worth of crazy, but
Mhm.
at a point, like, my stepmother also had to decide, like, okay, he's just going to stay home and he's just going to die. But like, that was like so hard for her too, because she had been like the main factor that was like, I don't believe it. Like, he's gonna pull through. Everything's going to fine. He's going to be okay,
Yeah.
and all these things. Right. And then, but I was like, a year ago, he's like, he wants to go. Like,
He's done.
he's
He's
done. Like, he's done
he's
being
done.
here. Like, and, but yeah, and just what I love is that you're being an advocate for those people who need to transition. I don't want to say leave because no,
No.
they're still with us. We
Oh,
can still
absolutely.
access, their energy and communicate with them. It's just we don't have their physical body, to be with.
Right. It's the human
Yeah, it's
experience
the
that misses them.
exactly, and and the other hard part too is that like you know they transition to where they want to transition to. So like
Yes.
my depending on their belief structure and the things that they want to create, in that energetic reality. And so my dad, his belief structure was very much like, I just want to integrate back into oneness, with like everything,
Love that.
which I think
Oh,
is
I love that.
wonderful for him.
Yes, it
Hard
is.
for me because
That's
like
the work.
I
Yeah.
can't communicate with him in the same way that other people who, like I help teach people how to, communicate with their loved ones and things like that. But then like it's hard because like he's connected to the oneness. So the way that I experience him is very different. And so that can be challenging
Yeah.
too. But again, like roundabout, what I'm trying to say is that thank you for doing this work, because
Love
if
that.
he didn't have people listening to him so that he could pass it home and do things in the gracious way that he wanted to do things, that
Absolutely.
he would have passed in a way that would have been complete misery to him. To
Oh,
be in a hospital
absolutely.
and to do those things would have taken away like his I can't even think of the right words, but just You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
that even
absolutely.
the what it means to be a man and to have his power
That
and
dignity
yes,
and that power
dignity.
and
Thank you. That's
yes,
what I'm looking
absolutely.
for. And he really needed that dignity, you know. But again,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's a challenge to go through that. And so I'm wondering, like, how is that for you? I mean, I get that you're also removed to some extent because it's not your
Yeah,
family, but you're building a family with these people, you know? And so I can
absolutely.
imagine that
Absolutely.
it must be challenging on some respects, but also like maybe very liberating. Like, wow, now they're going back to like their true
Yes,
selves, right?
absolutely.
And
Right.
reintegrating back with, you know, who they originally were before this human physical experience. So tell me about that.
Yes. So it's interesting. I just have to touch on it because I believe the universe aligns everybody at exactly the right time
Mm.
with the right people to have the exact right conversation, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
when my dad passed away, again, he wasn't biologically my dad, but that was my dad. And he was 83 when he passed away. And he went into the hospital with like pneumonia. We were like, yeah, he'll be fine. It'll be no big deal.
Yeah.
And he was in the hospital for 21 days. And he looked at me, he's like, I want to go home. And I'm like, I know you want to go home. I'm like, we're going to get you situated at the rehabilitation center so you can stand up and walk on your own. And mid sentence, he's like, I want to go home. And I'm like, noted. Okay, I
Mm.
got it. So within an hour, my husband flew home. He moved his hospital bed into his living room. He went to our like Lowe's down here, the home improvement store, bought a ton of flowers to fill my dad's basket because he has hanging baskets around his porch.
Yeah.
And it was April. Everything was still like frozen and dead, right? So he went down and bought tons of flowers to fill his baskets up. We got everything situated. And so he was home within 24 hours and he could sit in his bed and look out his front porch and look at his flowers and his trees until he transitioned 3 days later. And
Mm.
like, that's what it was. So I absolutely love that the universe aligned us exactly how we needed to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like your dad was trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think whenever people call me, like, I don't know what to do, like, they're in the active stages of dying, I'm like, tell them it's okay to go. Like, you have to tell
Yeah.
them it's
Yeah,
okay
I
to
had
go.
to do that. Yeah.
9 out of 10 times, the reason people hold on is because somebody is not telling them it's okay to
Yeah.
go.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
mom, dad, wife, sibling, child,
Well,
whatever.
that's
Like,
what my
let
dad said.
them
Like he would
go.
say
Let
that
them go.
repeatedly to me. He's like, the reason why I'm still here is because of my wife, because I don't want
Yeah,
to leave her. And I'm like, she's going to be okay. We're going to be
she'll be
okay. And
okay.
we'll take care of her. And it's okay. It's time
Absolutely.
for you to go, you know?
Right. And that's those are the most powerful words and the most amazing gift you can give somebody, saying it's okay, you can let go. I'll
Yeah.
see you later.
Yeah.
It's not goodbye. It's I will see you
Yeah.
later.
No, totally.
And it's powerful. It's very powerful. I'm sorry, I forgot what you asked because I
Oh,
was trying to remind
no
you about the
worries. I'm
dad.
the same way. I'm the same way. So connecting with other people, and is that hard for
Oh,
you to, you know, I mean, like I said, there's one element where you're like, yay, they're reintegrating, and another element where you're with like the grieving,
the grieving.
and how is that when you're dealing with a lot of grief in your life?
So I think I look at grief very differently than I think a lot of people do, and
Mm,
I really hope I can advocate for these conversations as much as possible. Um, so I'll try to back it up a little bit. For years, as I was meeting with clients, I would look for like a grief workbook and like we need to like work it out. You cannot go around grief; it will come back around. You can't distract from it. You have to go through it, right? And with the connections with people. And of course, my heart breaks for them, but I understand that this is part of the human experiences is letting go,
yeah.
right? Like that's what our whole entire life is. My partner used to say all the time, and I use this all the time, but he's like the whole existence of a human is to learn the one lesson of letting go. So when you look at it that way, it's not easy because it's hard. Some
Wow.
days are hard,
Yeah.
but we have to be like, you know what, that's okay. Like we have them. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to cry and scream and go outside and whatever you need to do,
Hmm.
but don't let it swallow you whole. Um, but I will hold that space for you while you want to do it. That's fine. We'll dig in the mud together. It's great. But I do feel like I have a connection with every single client I've ever had. Their loved ones, I will remember them even if I never see them again.
Mm-hmm.
I'll like go to the grocery store and I'll see like a certain like pile of lemons that I knew that client is going to want to have in her mom's kitchen because her mom likes that like aesthetic in her kitchen. So I will always think about them.
Yeah.
Or if I hear a certain song, like, so they all leave a spot on me somewhere and I feel connected and love, and I feel a lot of love for them. I don't feel the sadness of grief for other people. I feel bad that they're missing their loved ones,
Mm-hmm.
but I think I just look at it differently. So I used to look for grief workbooks for my clients and I could never find one. So we actually created one this
Mm.
year. And it's literally like, like those wreck your journal books that you could write all
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
It's like that, but it's
Nice.
for grief where you can scream and yell and rip stuff out and write really mean letters to whoever you're mad at and rip them out and throw them away. Like do all the things,
Oh, that's
right?
awesome.
I feel like we have to have those. We can have these conversations. The reason people are so freaked out about grief is they think it follows this really weird box and an outline, and there's a time, and there's a way,
Right.
and as long as you're not hurting yourself or someone else, there are no rules to grief.
Well,
There's
people
no
think
rules to
it's
grief.
not okay to be like angry or pissed off at that person, or like,
Literally.
yeah, and it's like
Oh,
those are all perfectly normal and natural feelings
super
to
things.
have like in that moment, and it's so
Perfectly
important to
normal.
get that energy out, like you don't want that energy like
Yes.
festering in you and then eventually harming you because you're holding all that
Yes.
negative energy. And so just like find ways to like work through that. And I love that you've created that kind of workbook because I mean that's like the real like dirty, messy
The
like work,
dirty work. Yes.
that you gotta do. And grief, it's not like just a simple, like easy, like they want to say like these are like what the 5 stages of grief or whatever, and it's just like
Yeah.
I can't tell
No.
you how many times I
And
heard that because like I myself was in a motorcycle accident when I was 19 and
mhm.
I lost my right leg. And so but I
It's a form of grief you have to
right? Yeah.
process
And
through.
I can't tell you how many times like they're like, you got to go through the 5 stages of grief, whatever. And I'm just
Oh my
like,
God.
ah,
I cannot. I
like
cannot.
sure. Did I go through them? Sure. Do I need to be told the 5 stages of grief to do it? No. What,
They're going to look different for
right?
you than what they're going to look for them. And
Yeah.
denial and anger, it's all going to look different. And that's the whole point of having these conversations. And grief comes in so many forms.
Yeah.
Like you said, you lost your leg. You had to go through and you probably will still randomly be like, damn it, I really wish I could go do that. And I
Yeah.
can, but I
Absolutely.
want to do it this way, not this
Yep.
way. And it's very frustrating. You can grieve the loss of the life you thought you were going to have.
Yeah.
You can
All the
grieve the
time.
loss of a career or anything. It's not just death as in a human loss, this human
Hmm.
experience, or the soul lost the human experience in transition. It comes in so many forms. And it's so raw. And I refer to grief as like the wave. The wave can like lap at your toes like you're at the beach, and it can like go across your skin and you can feel it and you know it's there. And sometimes a wave will come in and knock you down and pull you under, and you'll feel like that sand and grit digging into your skin, and it hurts
Yeah.
and it's cracking you open and it's pulling you in and you can't breathe. Eventually, the wave's going to go back out and it's going to be present, but it's not going to suck you under.
Yeah.
But that wave, the thing with grief, that wave can come anytime. You can
Yeah.
be doing dishes 10 years later and boom, it hits you again. And it feels just like it did the day it happened.
Oh, yeah.
And for some reason, people think that's not okay. And I'm like, no, we got to talk about this. Let's talk about this, please. Because what we've always thought grief was is not what grief is at all. It's just
I
not.
love that you say that too, because, it's like the people outside of the experience, like want to allot you a finite amount of time to grieve, right? Okay, well, you've grieved enough and everything's good and you should be over with your grief by now or whatever. And it's like, well, wait a minute. You continue to grieve throughout your entire life, like in different ways, and like you
Absolutely.
said, sometimes it may come out of the blue and it may be like really strong. And I'm like, wait a minute, I thought I went through like all this grief,
I
but it's
thought I
like
was
this
good.
whole other layer of like, nope, you didn't hit this layer or whatever, this layer of
Right.
experience. And it's like, we got to allow like people and ourselves to go through like various levels of grieving, and to understand, like, if we see someone who like their family member has passed like many years ago and yet they're still grieving, that's normal to continue to do that, just
Absolutely.
as long as you can still like function in your life.
Function,
Otherwise you
right?
do, absolutely want to get like help, which I am a firm advocate
Absolutely.
for,
I am a big advocate of,
therapy.
seeking whatever you
Yeah.
need, but you have to do it. You have to be okay with it. Literally, what's today? Sunday? I had a client call on Wednesday and I was talking to her and she said, I don't know how to help my mother-in-law. Her husband passed away and she thought by now she'd be done crying with these crying spells. I'm like, well, how
Mm-hmm.
long could it be past? She's like, a year. I'm like, oh, no, no. She's just getting started. No, that first year, in
Yeah.
my opinion, in my experience, that first year, you're on autopilot.
Yep.
Everybody thinks the first birthday is hard. No, no, no. Wait till year two.
Yeah.
Because year one, you're caught up in thinking, oh, this is the first birthday. This is the first birthday. This is the first holiday. But by year two, you're not talking about it like that. And you are present in the moment, like, oh shit, they're not here.
Yeah.
And I really think year two is always the hardest. I mean, that's just my experience, but I've seen it happen time and time again. And like, it's okay to cry and be mad. And that was actually one of the first things I put in this workbook was these random pages throughout the book where it's like, so you're pissed off again, you can go ahead and yell it out. And like blank pages just to write about being mad. And then flipping through a few more chapters and stuff. And there's a thing like, it's okay to be ticked off. Like, what are you mad about today?
Yeah.
And we're giving permission for people to be mad. You think you can't talk ill of the dead. You can't be mad at the dead. Watch me. Like, watch.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, when my mom died, I was furious. I was so mad at her. She was very young. No reason for her to pass when she did,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. And I'm furious. Like, I have a teenage daughter. I have a son with special needs. I need my mom. Like,
Mm.
how dare you die? And it was like a process, right? There is a nurse. There's a hospice nurse. Death doulas don't do the medical part. Hospice nurses do that. So I
Right.
think
Right.
hospice nurses are very important. But there's a very, very popular hospice nurse named Hadley, and she explains grief beautifully. She's like, when you first have your experience with grief, it's like a little box, and there's a little red button on the bottom of the box, and there's a little bouncy ball bouncing around. But when the box is small, it's constantly hitting it, so it hurts all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as you go on, your box gets bigger, that button's still there, and that ball's still bouncing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it may not hit it as often, but when it does tap that red button on the bottom, it's like it happened all over again in that
Mm.
moment, that same pain. And I'm like, she's a genius. I love the way she explains that. And it's the best way I can think to explain grief and feeling the pain of grief and the wave of grief. And it's never going to go away. We
Yeah.
just learn to, walk with it. We learn to walk
Yeah,
with it.
no, and I think that's a really solid point. Like, if we can learn to just have that grace of within ourselves, of it's okay if it hurts us again, and we go through that grieving process again in that moment, and just hold space for ourselves. Like, it's
Absolutely.
just part of like how things are going to happen. And like, as I get older, I'm 53 now, and I find like more and more people in my world are passing. And so it's
Mhm.
like getting more and more okay with like grieving. Like when you're younger,
Definitely.
you think you're going to live forever and like nothing's ever going to happen. You don't know anybody who's died, and then more and more as you go through life, you're experiencing more and more of this. And now I'm to the point
Absolutely.
where I actually equate this a lot with being pregnant. So like, when you get pregnant, you're like, you don't think about like the birthing process much. You're just like, yay, I'm
Yeah.
pregnant and everything's awesome,
Right.
right? And then there's some point like in the pregnancy, right, where you're like, oh shit, this
That's
baby is
hilarious.
gonna
Yes.
come out and it is not gonna feel good, and I am not looking forward to this, right? And I think it's the same thing with death, right? You're like,
Yes.
like everything's fine, I'm good, and then you hit like some age, I don't know, some
They're
arbitrary
like,
age
oh,
where you're like, oh shit,
yes.
I'm gonna be
Absolutely.
leaving at some point. And then it's like all you can think about is like, oh my god, what
Right.
the hell, now I gotta prepare for this.
Absolutely. The whole birth thing is absolutely perfect because you spend 8.5 months like stoked and
Yeah.
excited. And then suddenly, like 2 weeks before, you're like, oh, this has got to come out somehow. Oh, whoa, wait a
You're
minute.
like,
But
whoa,
then,
whoa, whoa.
wait a minute, backpedal. Well, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with death. Like, you hit this point, like when my dad passed away, he was my last like living relative besides my children.
Mm.
I have no biological like, so I was like 35-ish when the last living like blood relative passed away besides my children. And I was like, oh, like naturally I would, the next oldest person would be me. And hold on. And I think 35 is young to be having that
Yes.
thought.
Yes.
But at the same time, I'm like, but really, technically, timing wise, that checks out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's still a very weird moment. It's that moment when you're like, oh, one day I'm going to die. But the beautiful thing is you have almost like that same birth analogy. You get to the end and you're like, I don't want to do this. Hold on, I don't want to leave. But as soon as you're born on the other side, it's just like when a child is born. The minute you have that child, what pain? What are you talking about? Literally
Right.
5 minutes later, we forget, like, what are you talking about? It was no big deal. We don't remember that pain. It's just erased from us.
Yeah.
When we transition into death, we have that same, oh, that's okay. That wasn't so bad. And I think it's really cool to have that, it's very interesting to me that you brought that up. I'm like, it's perfect because that's exactly what we do. We just pop
Right.
out the other side. We're good.
Yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah. No, and I've thought about death, a lot in my life. And one of so I really like experiences. To me, like I love like metaphysical experiences, and all sorts of
Yes.
different things. And so one of the things that I really wanted to do from a young age was I wanted to experience my own passing. Now, not with pain, not with all the other things that go with it, not the fear, not the whatever. It's not what I'm asking for, universe. but,
You're
but
like, let me use my words
what I
wisely.
am asking for is that as I transition, I want to be aware of the awareness from this reality to the other reality. As I go from one to reality to the other, I'm really curious what that's like because, I've done a lot of, astral projection and lucid dreaming and
Mhm.
all sorts of like other, metaphysical things. And so, and I've had a near death experience, and all these things. So it's like, I want to have that experience and I want to see what it's like to go back, to my other
Right.
reality. So have you thought about that at all?
I love that. Um, I think me personally, I haven't been like, this is what I want.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, I was like, just let me, when it's my time, let me just go to sleep and not wake
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
want to have none of us like want to be in pain when we die.
yeah.
But for my experience as a medium, 99.999% of the time, when people transition, the minute their soul leaves their body, they're very aware. Like,
Mm,
oh, that's crazy. I had everybody fooled into thinking I was that guy. That's not who I am. That's the outfit I was
yeah,
wearing that day.
yeah.
And that seems to be the consensus
Mm-hmm.
right directly after passing. Now we have the ones that it happened so fast they had no clue it was even happening. Like
Right.
until suddenly they look around and like, holy shit, wait a second, this isn't right. But most of the time they are fully aware, and the second your soul comes out, they're like, oh, that was a fun, vacation. Now let's do something else. That was an interesting like class I just took. And they're very aware of all the things,
Yeah.
right? They're very aware of the name that they used and the family they had. But it's not this overwhelming grief of sadness like, man, I want to go back with my kids. You love your children or your spouse or your dog or your cat, whatever, and you love them, but it's not the grief that humans experience. It's different. They're like, I'm glad I got to experience that. And yes, I love them, but they understand we're all just one. We're all connected.
Right.
That little silver string runs through all of us, and they will absolutely kind of be absorbed right back into that oneness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really interesting whenever I have a client when they show me how they pass. They normally show me the week of, like the week before their transition, and then directly after. And most of the time they're very much like, can you believe I pulled off having this whole, reality, thinking I was this person in this weird little outfit I was strolling around in. And that's not who I am, but that's who I was for that experience. And I just think that's really neat.
I love that. I love that. So I'm really curious to go into this a little bit more because, like when we're in our physical reality, this seems like the end all be all, like the only experience, right, that there is.
Yeah.
And then like, as you're saying, you're transitioning, back into our true selves, our energetic beingness, right? And then they're like, oh yeah, like this is my greater self. This is who I really am. And this is my reality. And I've had that experience before, like just, I don't know if it was, an astral projection, out of body experience or whatever. I don't remember what it was, but I have had moments where I'm like, oh yeah, I remember, right? And I'll remember for like a millisecond. I'll be like, I remember,
Right.
and then
Right.
quick, I'm right back, and I'm like, I've forgotten, like where was it, but
Mhm.
that's a moment that I crave, like I crave that remembering and that reconnecting. So I'd love you to tell me more about like their experience, as they're reintegrating back into themselves and how that is for them as a whole. I know you've talked a little bit about that, but I'd love to hear more about that.
So the perspective, it's all about the perspective,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think it's, and as far as that, you have that connection to the greater being, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have that for a split second, we get it sometimes. But as humans, we're not supposed to understand now. And that's hard
Yeah.
because our souls have this pull to understand and we want to know. But as humans having as souls having this human experience, we're not supposed to.
Mm.
And so when I see people who constantly want to do like past life regressions and they want to do this, I'm like, you're not being present in this
Yeah.
existence. If you hang on too tight, you're going to miss what you're supposed to be doing now. And that just means more work for later. So be present in it. Now, as far as on the other side, the key word here is perspective. It's all about perspective. So here we are diddling along the road as humans, and we don't know that there's a car accident like 10 blocks up the road. We don't know. We can't see it. We can't, whatever. When somebody crosses over, they have a perspective of being like 25 stories up immediately. They
Mm.
can see this car that ran the stop sign, who rear ended this car, who jumped the curb, who did this, who caused the accident all the way down there, but they see it as the whole of what it is, right? And
Mm.
it's like that with their whole life. They don't have this, oh my gosh, I really hate that I did this. And don't get me wrong, they do go through, they have to do their work on the other side. Like we have to do our work
Yeah.
here. We do have work on the other side to do. I'm not going to be like, it's all puppy dog paradise. That's not it. Not it. We have work to do, but they can see it for what it is now.
Mm.
Like this was my experience. This is what I was supposed to take from that. This is how I handled it. I see where I should have done that very differently.
Mm-hmm.
And now what can I take from it? And that's how they see things differently there than here.
Mm.
And I think it's really amazing to have that opportunity as a soul. We're supposed to, I don't know how you feel about past lives. I'm a big believer
Yeah.
in reincarnation and past lives. I don't think it happens as quickly as what people think that we do.
Yeah.
Like we pop out of this body and pop in another one.
Yeah.
No,
No. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
no.
No.
Mm-mm. But we do have work to do here. We have work to do there, and it's all about the lessons that we are collecting along the way.
Yeah.
Um, like I'm really big into like horoscopes and zodiacs, and in my opinion, like Sagittariuses are like spiritual wanderers, right? They have a little
Mm.
knapsack. I always picture a Sagittarius with like collecting stuff and carrying it with them. That's kind of what we do on the other side. We take all these bits and pieces and we can put them together and see it as a whole and be like, oh, well, that was weird, but okay, here's what I take from that. And we're able to process it differently there.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah, no, that
that's
makes
where I'm at
sense.
with
That
it.
makes sense. I always thought that, and this is probably true because it's just one of those things that's in my consciousness. But I feel like I came into this physical experience, this physical reality with I want to learn as much as humanly possible in one incarnation, right?
Right?
And of course, what that really meant was as much suffering and tragedy as possible, right? Because that's really like how we seem to like learn the best is through like those really deep, like gut
Yeah.
wrenching like experiences, right? So like my whole
Right?
life, and it's funny because like you said you like charts and stuff. I've done a human design chart for myself, right?
Yeah.
And it said, your whole life will be about suffering. And that, isn't that great? Your
Wow.
whole life will be about
Right.
suffering until you hit 50. And then everything that you've learned, you will use to help others. And I'm like,
That's
I'm
beautiful.
53 now and it
You're like,
still hasn't happened. I mean, like I am helping others.
it's a
Don't get me
process.
wrong,
Yeah.
but like when is the suffering going to be over?
Right. And it's like when I signed that soul contract, what was I really thinking? Because,
Right?
like, what kind of dare system was I on with somebody that day? Come
Yeah.
on now. What was I
Right?
doing?
Oh my
Throw
god.
all the options in at once.
I
Like, where's
know.
your Chiron at? Like, we're just going to sit in the middle of everything. Oh, it's
Seriously.
crazy.
And also, like, as you're talking about soul contracts, and a lot of people will, this kind of brings in the idea about guides and things like that, because, and I'm always curious about guides and how all of that functions too, because I have a limited experience of guides. I don't know everything about them. And, I'm curious, like, what you know about like when we want to come into this physical experience, we're making these contracts, but we're also making contracts with others, like I want to have this
Yeah.
relationship with these people. I want to have this particular, being, soul guiding me and being with me my whole lifetime. Like, is that a thing? Are they there like the whole
Right.
lifetime? Do we have guides that are there like part of the time? Like, I'm always teaching, like, you have like, a being that's with you like at least most of the time. And then you have guides that you can call in for specific like needs and things that you're working
Right.
on. But these are just based on like my own experiences. So I'm curious, like, what your understanding of these things are.
So first off, if anybody tells you they know everything about anything, you put your money in your pocket and you walk away.
Yeah,
We don't
totally.
do that.
Right.
We do not do that.
Yeah.
We do not.
Yep.
So when we
Totally.
talk about these things, whether people talk about angels or guides or whatever, I'm here for all of it. Whatever feeds your soul and it makes your soul feel good, then that's what you do. I do believe I have a guide. I know for a fact he has been in my life through multiple lives. I know that for a fact. It's not a question.
Mm-hmm.
I know he has to be here as my guide this time and not in my physical experience. I don't know why we chose it. I guess I'll know when I get to the other side. But I
Mm-hmm.
know for a fact that's why he's there. Now, I do believe like our loved ones and other guides can come in and you can feel when the universe is working with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I do believe that we normally have one or a few that we are like, that's mine, that's my soul contact, that's my person, that's whatever you want to call it. I work very, very
Mm-hmm.
closely with my guide every day. If I woke up and he wasn't there, I'd probably freak out. I wouldn't know what to do with myself. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like people like Chip Coffey calls it his God Squad. He has like a whole slew of them. And I know one that I am very, very close with. And like I said, I can feel when the universe is working, but we all have them. We all have a connection to the other side. Whether or not you want to dig into it and open up to it is completely an individual decision. But the universe is always
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
there, like giving you a little shove.
Yeah. Yeah. And how long have you like been aware of guides and working with guides?
Forever. I've always had him. When I was a little girl, my mom and one of her friends will like she still makes fun of me all the time about it. I used to talk to him like everybody thought he was like my imaginary friend for a long time. I would have a full conversation with him because I see him like I see anybody else. And I would
Mm.
get really, really frustrated and I would get very angry with my mom and my grandfather and be like, why are you not talking to him? Like, what is wrong with you? And
Mm-hmm.
finally, that's when they realized, oh, maybe she's seeing things differently than we're seeing things. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what really got my like support group, my like little roots, I call them, that really started supporting me and taking me to meet people and go to seminars and courses when I was very, very young to kind of
Mm-hmm.
explore it because they were like, oh, she means this. She's not just having some imaginary friend. She means this with her whole being and she's really ticked off. We're not
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging him. So
Yeah.
that's just kind of how it is. So
Do
he's
you
just
think a lot of kids that have imaginary friends, do you think that they're probably having the same experience as you?
absolutely 1,000%. I think we are all born psychic and connected to the other side. It's a very thin veil between there and here.
Mm-hmm.
So often when a child is born, people will have a lot of like paranormal experiences happen in their house and they
Mm-hmm.
just brush it off because they're so fixated and stressed about the new baby in the house. They're not paying attention to that weird light that's suddenly flickering or that picture frame that's slamming down or weird noises because they're not they're not aware of it. But 9 out of 10 times when a child is born, paranormal experiences will happen around the house.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I promise. If people hear it, they'll start looking for it. You'll notice it. But
Gotcha.
then, by the time a child is 5, 6, 7, we're like, kind of, society kind of grooms it out of us. It kind of washes it off. And it's like anything, if you don't feed it, you don't take care of it, it's not going to grow.
Right.
But I think we are all of us are born psychic. All of us have this deep rooted intuition that is your greatest guide and your greatest teacher you will ever have in this life. Period. Is your own
Yeah.
intuition.
Oh yeah, no, I'm a firm advocate of that. In fact, I teach people about psychic development, and one of the ways that I explain like being psychic. So, I say like just like your physical body has physical senses,
Mm-hmm.
your energetic body has energetic senses, and these are your psychic senses. And so you have them all. And I also explain to people, I'm like, you're not just like one Claire, I mean, could you imagine like going around with your physical body and being like, I only taste things. I never smell
Right.
things or see things or whatever. And then it's not like, your senses are just like occasionally on. It's like when you go around your physical life, right? You're constantly smelling and seeing and touching or whatever. And but it's whether or not you're paying attention to that
Right.
information. And so it's the same thing with your energetic senses. Like, if you're so used to only paying attention to what you see, then you're going to think that you're only clairvoyant. But,
Right.
all your other energetic senses are constantly giving you feedback. It's just learning to pay attention to that feedback. And so I love
thousand
that you
percent.
say that.
A
Yeah.
1000%. I agree with you. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And I really want people to understand that as well as stop fricking comparing like your abilities to other people because, and this is the other way that I explain it too. So like, they're all on a spectrum, right? And so
Right.
like I may use, my hearing sense more than my seeing sense or my
Mm-hmm.
feeling sense more than my knowing sense or whatever. And so now I have like this spectrum, right? And this
Right.
blueprint of like how my psychic abilities like manifest, right? And then you may come up here and you may be like, okay, I use my seeing sense way more than my hearing sense or whatever. And so you've got this opposite spectrum than me. And to
Right.
think that our abilities would manifest in the same way, like is
Right.
ridiculous,
It is
because they're going
absolutely
to
ridiculous.
manifest so differently and they're going to manifest dependent on like the things that you need to experience in this human like physical experience.
Yeah.
Like for
The
some
human experience.
people,
Yeah.
like they have, aphantasia where they don't have like an inner like vision,
So
you
weird.
know? Isn't that weird?
We just had this conversation in my house a few months ago when I found out
Really?
my partner doesn't hear a voice in his head. And I'm like, yes, you do. He's like,
Yeah.
no, I don't. Like, but when you
Yeah.
talk, you hear yourself, right? He's like, why would I
No.
do that? And I'm like, you're one of the weird
Yeah.
people, David. You are a pod person. What is going on? Tell me how you experience a
Right?
thought. And it's foreign to me. My brain cannot compute. I cannot
Right?
compute.
I know. It's
It just
phenomenal.
shows
And
you how the
yeah.
spectrum works. It's wild to me. But I
Right?
have noticed because of that conversation, I'm going to totally just go off track for a minute.
Yeah, go for it.
Is people that do that are very logical thinkers, I have
Yeah.
discovered. They're super logical. They don't rely on that like natural, like they're not emotional. They're not emotional. They don't let emotions rule them. But they're
Mhm.
super, super logical. And I have noticed more Capricorns have that than anybody else I've talked to. When I
Interesting.
found that, I'd be like,
Yeah.
what's your sun sign? I'm like, what's your sun sign? I'm
Yeah.
curious what it is. And I have noticed a trend with Capricorns, but they're very logical people too normally. So at least my
Interesting.
experience, just my experience. But yeah,
Yeah.
they're very logical thinkers. They don't see pictures in their head when they read a book. They don't hear a voice in their head. And I'm like, I don't,
Yeah,
my
isn't that
brain,
wild?
I can't
Yeah.
compute that. I just
Yeah,
cannot.
yeah. Well, I've been quizzing people about this too because like with not seeing like something in their mind's eye, right? Not being able to formulate an image through their own imagination. But interestingly, everyone that I've asked about this who's had this, 100% of them have said, when I receive guidance in my mind's eye, I do see that. And I'm like,
Interesting.
really? So I mean, it's only a few people,
Right.
granted, that
That's
I've asked
interesting.
so far, but it's 100% of those few people. So I'm really curious, like, if any of you viewers out there have aphantasia and is specific for viewing or even hearing, in the
Right.
same kind of way, like, I'm really curious, like, if you have that experience, if you can't formulate it for yourself, do you notice it when you receive it as guidance? Because this is one of the things that I teach too, is that, so like if you're imagining something, right? It's the same mechanism as when you're receiving guidance. Like
Hmm.
you're receiving it with the same mechanism that you create your own imagination, which is why it's so hard to discern whether or not it's you or guidance. And so you just have to
Right.
discern whether or not you're using the mechanism or they're using the mechanism or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
And so, yeah. And so like when you're dealing with like aphantasia or whatever, and you're not being able to, create that thing in the mechanism, but you can receive that thing in the mechanism. Like I'm really curious about those things.
I think it's
So,
really cool that there's a study that people that connect to the other side, like mediums or psychics that connect to the greater source, often when they do like actual like scans on them and they do like MRIs on them or they do like brain scans on them, the part that shows that our body is asleep will kick on, so it looks like our body is sleeping but we'll be having a full conversation, and the part that's
right.
showing like lucid dreaming is in overdrive. And I think that's really cool. So I
Yeah.
think that's really, really neat. I've seen a few documentaries. Tyler Henry did it. I had a client who was a nurse at the neuro center here in Wilmington, and she was
Mm.
talking about it. And it's very interesting to me how the human experience and our soul experience and how they click together and it works. I think it's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'm
Fascinating.
always wanting to study these things and see how they all work because that's like how my mind is. I want to
I
understand.
want to know
Right? I
all
want to
the things.
know. Yeah. And I love like, how is it that, our physical body and our soul body are integrating, right?
Right.
And like, so for example, like when, we're dealing with like clairsentience and like the feeling sense, like, and a lot of people will be like, well, I feel it in my physical body. And I'm like, actually, you think that it's your physical body. At least this is my understanding. I could be wrong,
Right.
but that your energetic body is within and overlays over your physical body, and that a lot of the things that we think we're feeling in our physical body are actually we're feeling energetically with our
Right.
energetic body. And but I'm curious like how it all integrates too, because then people talk about like the chakras, like the energy points, and how the energy is filtering from the energetic realm into our physical body, and that they're doing it through different energetic frequencies to manifest in
Right.
different ways. So I don't know, I love that stuff.
I do too, absolutely. Because I'm one of those that will physically take on what the client is trying to push through. If like they died in a car
Mm.
accident, I'll have like a slammed feeling against my chest or my face. If they died because they couldn't breathe, I will struggle coughing. Like I have really red cheeks right now because of a client I had earlier
Oh yeah.
because he was in a fire, and I was like, God, my face is so hot. I don't understand what's going on. And by the time I got the call with him, I was like, oh, it tracks. But my
Right.
body had to like, I used to go into like full blown like sweating and panic attacks from it. But eventually my body was like, this is temporary. It's the energy that you are feeling. It's not your body
Right.
going through it, right? And that's what you were
Mm-hmm.
kind of explaining. And it's very much what it is. And now normally within a couple of hours it's gone and it's moved through and it's no big deal. But for
Mm-hmm.
a long time I was petrified. I couldn't figure out why my body was going just haywire. I couldn't figure it out. But it shows you that separation of human and soul that's in there. So
Yeah.
it's
So
really cool.
how did you learn how to discern the difference? Like, this is one of the things that's so challenging about clairsentience. I think it's one of the hardest clairs to deal with because of figuring out and discerning like what is mine, what feeling is mine, and what feeling am I picking up? So how did
Right.
you start differentiating those things?
So we touched on it for just a second, but I'm a firm believer in learning the lesson of letting go, which is hard. That's a hard one, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
so when I
mm-hmm.
realized I would do a reading for somebody and I would just feel super tense, or even people that are just, empaths that aren't mediums or psychics, like you take it on and you're holding it. And I had to learn how to like let it flow out, like let it
Mm.
flow through me. Even if it's something as simple as having like a specific stone you pick up that you use to ground yourself, to you can picture it pushing through your body and letting go, whether it's standing in water or grass or ground, whatever you do. But we have to, I think it helps when people have something physical and tangible they can do, because that gives us, it makes sense to our brain. You know, it's not the soul part that it makes sense to, but it makes the human part make sense. I'm feeling tense. Let me grab this and it'll help kind of release it. Um, I struggle with it on occasion now, but nowhere near like it. It's only if it's a really, really intense session and it was a really traumatic death of some sort or traumatic
Mm.
message coming through. But I really think if you start off with baby steps of learning to let go, like if you are overwhelmed with stuff, find something that you can hold on to that's small enough where you can like put in a pocket or something, hold on to it and just picture it going through your whole body and coming out into that one item. Like it's just a kind of a baby step way. And as you do that, you'll learn how to slowly push it out, like really let it go.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I said, we touched on it briefly, but everything in our life, no matter how minuscule or how big it is, really, really believe that the lesson of letting go is the main lesson that humans are supposed to, or that souls are supposed to have on this human experience. That's just a
Mm.
little baby step in it. It's just, it helps. At
Mm-hmm.
least that's what
Mm-hmm.
I do. The people I work with in our workshops, I'm like, find something tangible that you can do and hold on to. And it works. It gives them a feeling of kind of control over it. And that helps when we think we can control something like that.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, that's very helpful because I know a lot of people are dealing with that, especially just clairsentience is can be so challenging, and feeling so overwhelming. And then, how do I know, if this is mine? And so
If
I
it's
think you're
ego
right.
or if it's
Yeah.
spirit, yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I
And
didn't
just,
realize I did it, but my partner after a session, I would like run my hands over my legs constantly. And he's like, do you realize you do that for like hours after a session? And I didn't realize I was doing it. And I
interesting.
realized it was my body's way of trying to get it out. Like it was like a static thing. I was pulling it out.
Oh,
And I didn't
yeah.
real
Yeah.
I had to
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
somebody else outside with a different perspective. Like, do you see what you're doing again? Like,
Yeah.
I'm watching you do this again. And it was just, now I'm aware of it. So I'll catch myself stressing about something or I'll feel it coming on and
Hmm.
I'll
Hmm.
realize it because I'm rubbing my hands on my legs. It's weird. It's weird
Yeah,
things
no,
that
and
we
I like
do.
that too. I like that because, and I think I teach people like how to be the scientific observer of their own experiences, right? Because you're not going to know like how to develop your abilities or do all these things if you don't understand like how they work for you or whatever. You're not observing like, what's happening. So the fact that, and having somebody else observe it for you too is incredibly helpful to know that, okay, this
Helpful.
is what I'm doing. And then you're understanding and processing, okay, this is what I'm doing. And so
Right.
next time when this happens and I'm starting to do this, then I
I
know that I
realize.
need
Yeah.
to like, vent out this energy or find ways to vent out
Right.
this energy. And sometimes I tell people like, clap your hands, clap the energy out or like
Yeah.
wash your hands with cold water or just
Yeah.
even like visualizing. Cause again, it's energy. So, you're moving energy in all these different ways, do your primal screaming, like,
Yes. Big fan. We will go outside and scream it out. I do not care.
yeah, yeah. Feels so good. Feels so good. Well, I'd love to know more about your psychic abilities. I know you're talking about that you're psychic and a medium, and so I'd like to talk about these. And what they're like for you. Like, how do you experience your energetic senses, your clairs? What
Okay.
is, I mean, you can go through each one or however you
Yeah.
want to feel like, but like you said, for an example, with your guide, you see them as if you see anybody else.
Hmm.
What is that like for you?
Um, I think everybody in this work is totally different. There's no two
Yeah.
of us exactly alike. And I've mentioned to you before, I'm a huge skeptic, and most of the time if somebody's saying something like it sounds exactly like somebody else's story, I'm automatically not going to believe it because I'm
Yeah,
like, this
totally.
is unique to you. Like if you don't have
Yeah.
if you don't feel it in your own way, some, you know. Um, Now with me, I will feel them way before I see them. Like I know, I get like a heads up. I can feel it's coming normally. Very rarely have I walked around the corner and been like right here and didn't feel it coming, very rarely. And when that happens, I know I need to have my guard up. Like something, they were being sneaky for a reason. Like I want to know why they were being sneaky. I do have a guide, and a lot of people now, a lot of people describe this differently, but with me, I have like a front of the house, which is what I see right here. And I have a back of the house, which my guide kind of handles. It's when people want to connect with me. If like, say I have a client sitting in front of me, they're sitting right down, I'm sitting here, and their loved ones come up. They normally start trickling in because I work as an open channel. People that work as a closed channel, they normally need like a name, a connection, how long they've been gone. They'll look for one person and pull them in. I work as an open channel. I believe that often the people that come through are not the ones we expect, and they always deliver the messages we didn't know we needed, right? And perfect universal alignment. So whenever I'm sitting down with a client, I will feel them start to coming in, and my guide kind of is like the buffer. He's like the gatekeeper. And there's always one out of your little group of people that have crossed over that kind of take control. So my guide and theirs kind of work together to bring people in. And so I will feel them. I will get certain smells. I will see the way they look. Kind of a fun fact is I see them the way they present themselves. So I have a client, like I don't discuss my clients without their permission from their families that I talk to. This mother loves when I talk about her son, so I'm going to talk about him. But to me, he appeared like a very, very handsome, like very conventionally handsome young man, right? He looked like about 25, 26. And I read for this family a few times, and finally she's like, do you want to see a picture of him? And I'm like, hell yeah, I want to see a picture. I don't see pictures of my clients. And she pulled him out, and the man was 42. And I'm like, no, it's not him. I'm like, that's not him. She's like, yeah, yes, it is. We've done readings enough. That's him. I'm like, this is what he looks like. And she pulled out a picture of him when he was in his 20s. She's like, he's just flirting with you because that's when he thought he was like the man in his 20s. And I'm like, oh, so they present themselves how they feel the best, right? And so that's how I see them. If they were big smokers, I'll smell it, I'll taste it. I will also pick up normally how they passed away. If they drowned, I'll feel like I can't breathe for a while, like an asphyxiation type thing. So I kind of have all these layers of senses coming in at once is kind of how it works. But yeah, that's just how it works for me. Now, most mediums are also psychics, but not all psychics are mediums. So make sure if you're reaching out to a practitioner, make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into. Because if you go in to see a psychic, that doesn't mean you're going to talk to somebody who's crossed over. So make sure if you're looking for a service that you're looking at the right one. That's very, very important. Very important.
Are there so there's a couple questions that I have in my mind at the same time. I hate when this happens. but so let's just go with the one that I didn't write down so I don't forget it. What kinds of like ways would I know if a psychic or a medium isn't like genuine, or how would I distinguish like a good quote good one from one that isn't good?
Okay, so my very, very first piece of advice to that is follow your intuition. I don't care how famous they are. I don't care how many people recommended them to you. When you look at them, if your energy feels like that's not it, you walk away. It doesn't matter how good they are. It doesn't matter. I've had readings done by some of the biggest names of psychics and mediums in our country, and three of them were all like, I can't, and I know they're good, but it's because they're just not meant to make that connection for me.
Right.
That doesn't mean they're not good, just means it's not for me.
Yeah.
But I'm a huge skeptic. I truly believe 95% of the people in this line of work are frauds. So trust your intuition. Number one, trust your intuition. I am also a big believer, if they only use what I call the ABCs of mediumship, don't buy it. If they're like, oh, your mom came to you as a red cardinal. Oh, they are like showing you like 111 and 222. Like, no, we need to get real. We need, tell me something. And it's rarely, at least for me, it's rarely what you ask. So a lot of the times people will come in and tell me what, and again, it was the same individual I was just talking about. His mom and uncle were there, and she was super, super skeptic, or he was a super, super skeptic. And he was like, well, if this is really him, what car was his favorite car, that like he loves so much. And I'm like, I don't know what his favorite car is, but he's showing me about him flipping a red ATV and he wasn't supposed to be there. And you watched his eyes get big and you watched mom turn and look at him like, what do you mean an ATV? Because that
Nah.
was something that she didn't let him do when he did it anyways. So
Right.
those are the things that you look for. Look for the things that only you are going to know. Like
Yeah.
don't go in expecting this one, like when dad died, he said he's going to say this because it's not going to happen. That's not, at least
Mhm.
for me, that's not how it works. As soon as they ask, I know I'm about to have something super outlandish thrown in my face that it's going to be
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Well, you don't
That's
always remember those things. I mean, it's the same thing like,
right.
when you're trying to do like lucid dreaming or astral projecting and like you have an intention of the things that you want to do, but when you get into that reality to remember and recall those things is like super
Right.
challenging. So I can only imagine like that holds true. Like when you're out in the ether, as your energetic body again, you're going to remember the things that are significant and those things that are
Right.
going to be triggered for you. So
Right.
yeah,
And
thank you for sharing
it's,
that.
it's like that saying that like we make a plan and then God laughs. Like,
Mhm.
facts, like that's what happened. You can call God whatever you want, but it will literally laugh at you. But that's kind of part of it. I think that's part of it. But it's always interesting to me the things that stand out, and I always tell people that like make sure you have something to take notes with, because
Mm.
reading amnesia is real, and the stuff I'm telling
Yes.
you may not make sense in this moment. You will forget your middle name. You'll forget your mom's birthday. You'll forget what color your dog is that's sitting 2 feet away because you're caught up in the moment waiting to hear one thing that you're missing all the other stuff going around.
Right.
So I'm like, take notes. I promise you it will all make sense. Take notes. Just
Yeah.
take notes.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Definitely. No, I love that. And what was I going to say about that? Well, I'll come back to that. Um, about boundaries. So, when I was teaching, I think it was clairaudience, so the psychic hearing sense, and this one woman, she hadn't like really investigated her psychic hearing sense yet. And then she went home, she practiced, and lo and behold, things went from like 0 to 60. And then
They
all of a
always
sudden she
do.
had like all these like voices that were like lining up and talking to her. And she's like, what do I do? Like, I feel like I just want to shut this off because it is so intense and I am so overwhelmed. Like, what do I do? And I'm like, you can create your
Yeah,
own boundaries and you can say, look at this is when my shingle is up and I can,
yeah,
like I'm accepting people that come in and read and whatever. And then the rest of the time, like, please leave me alone unless
forgot.
it's an emergency or whatever. And so how do you handle that?
I am a firm believer in boundaries and then set them things on fire because they can't, like, seriously, we don't. You have to, like, have it up and have it powerful. You absolutely have to. Especially when I go out with paranormal investigation teams because they always, not always, most of the time, they want to poke at the scary stuff, right? Because that's what's going to get a reaction. So you have to go in and be very safe when you go into these places. And please, no matter, I don't care who you are, what you're doing, you have to be mindful of how like your instinct is telling you. If it's telling you something's not right, you need to work on putting your wall up. You need to be careful. Now I do have individuals that will try to come forward, and if my guide is like mm-mm, then I know it's not supposed to be, they're
Mm-hmm.
not supposed to be close to me. And I've been in situations and haunted places that there's a lot of negative energy, and you have to go in prepared because like your student said, when you fling that door open, it's very hard to close it. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to learning to protect yourself should come way before learning how to bring it all in, right?
Yeah.
You have to learn how to do it. So make sure that you can really focus, and it just takes practice. You really have to find out where your boundaries are. There is a woman that will wear her hat, and if she's wearing her hat, she was on TV for years, some British
Mm-hmm.
medium, but she would pop her hat on, and that's when she's like, I'm not working. That's like my lights off hat. We're not doing that. And
Oh,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
that's a
yeah.
cool physical way, because again, if it's something tangible that you can do, we
Yeah.
kind of like able
And
to
it
work with it.
reminds you, like, I'm not open, I'm not
Right.
doing this right now or whatever,
Right.
and having those boundaries. And then also, making sure that you're not doing these things out of fear. Like people, are so afraid of like, ghosts and spirits and whatever. And it's like, I'm always telling them, like, look at it's not something that you need to be afraid of, because when you create that fear, then you're putting that fear into that experience and then you're
Right.
attracting
You are feeding it.
more, fear-based things. And so it's
Feeding
really
it.
about keeping yourself in check too, and not going into that fear-based thing.
Right. Yeah. I have an adult daughter that is in the military and she's stationed overseas right now. And of course, because she's my daughter, she's like, let's find the haunted things and walk around it. And so she's calling me at like 3 o'clock in the morning, her time, walking around with her and a few friends in this abandoned building. I'm like, get out of there right now. Like, I feel it just looking at it. Please get out of there. And because they go in and they're all excited and amped up, you have to trust the people you're with. And unfortunately, you don't learn that until you have a very bad experience.
Yeah.
That's why I'm very picky about paranormal investigators I will work with now, because if they're doing things to provoke and prod, and sometimes it's necessary. I understand that for certain things. But if they are not going in there with the right intention, you are bringing that bad intention to me, and I don't want no part of it, because that can
Yeah.
get very dangerous very fast. It's okay to have a healthy fear, but don't go into it like scared and afraid. It's okay to have like
Yeah.
a healthy fear, but
Yeah.
not no, what you put out there is what you're going to manifest. And you
Yeah.
keep thinking scary stuff, that thing way over there feels it, and it's going
Yeah.
to be like, oh, let me suck into it, and it's going to grow
Mm-hmm.
bigger because of your fear. Like,
Yeah, it's
let's
going to
not,
amplify it for sure.
let's not
Yeah.
do that. Let's not do that.
Yeah, no, definitely.
That's not good.
And so you also mentioned, like, when you were talking about your guides and how, you have the guide behind you, essentially, that is filtering, the information as you're
Mhm.
reading the people. And then, I think this was from the other video that I was listening to you about, that your clairs and you doing the reading are separate from like what your guide is doing, that your guide
Oh yeah.
isn't giving you the information, but
Nope.
that you're picking up the information through your clairs. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. He works as, I used to call him my gatekeeper, but I have a client that calls him my bouncer now, and I think it's the funniest thing ever, because he kind of like holds the wall for me. There's literally like a wall here and there's a door, and I can feel everything over there. He can see everything over there. And when I'm open to work, he lets people come up closer. But he kind of like holds my boundary for me. Or
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, it's like walking into a really foggy room and 5,000 people yelling at me at one time.
Mm-hmm.
He
Mm-hmm.
like lets them in as need be for the situation. Every now and then I can feel one try to be slinky, but and kind of go around it, but it's not really like a physical stop, but he's very aware of everything that goes on. But no, he does not give me the information. He just kind of holds the door and lets people come in and out, and kind of protects me from being overwhelmed, letting really negative things get too close to me.
Mm-hmm.
People that, like, let's just say there was a horrible abusive parent on the other side that wants to get through to their child that's sitting in front of me. He's like, he has not done his work yet. He's not healed up. He can't come any closer. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
do it. He does like my filtering process. So no,
Right.
he does not give me the information, but he is the one that kind of allows people in and out of my space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And I'm
And
curious, like, if people are interested in doing, either mediumship or, just enhancing their psychic abilities and working with guides, like, this is kind of a twofold question. Like, how do you recommend that they, like, find and communicate with their guides? And then how do they begin to work with them in doing those things that they're interested in doing?
so I'm a big believer in meditation, but probably not in the way most people are going to picture it. I
Mm-hmm.
cannot sit still in a room and just be all quiet. I can't do that. My brain is
Yeah, I don't think most people can.
I can't do that. That's not how my brain works.
Yeah.
But you have to learn how to be present in your own body and be open. I don't
Mm.
know if that makes sense, but you
Yes,
have to
absolutely. 100%.
don't be looking so much, well, I'm looking for this and I want them to send this message and I ask all these questions out in the universe and I want an answer. You need to pause and be present in your own being. You can be sitting there doing dishes, and stuff like that helps because your hands are busy doing stuff.
Mm.
So it's not thinking. It's kind of like, what do they call that? Like a lizard brain thing. I forgot I don't know what the technical term is. I don't remember. But it's kind of like where you're an autopilot. So if you're
Yeah.
doing stuff like busy work with your hands, like you're doing dishes or you're folding clothes, your body's here and it's able to keep busy, so it's not trying to think of all the things, and it allows you to open up your mind. So I'm a really
Mhm.
big believer in connecting that way. Be very mindful if you are receiving something in, check it to see if it's ego, which is your human self thinking it, or if it's coming from somewhere else. That can get kind of confusing, but a really kind of good way to decipher which one's which is it something you want to hear. If it's something you want to hear, it's probably your ego telling you and not spirit telling you. If it's something you've been like really fixated on for weeks and weeks and like you're so desperate for an answer, that's not going to be the first thing the universe gives you is an answer you're desperate for. It's not how it works. So I think those are the two things to really really work on. Try to be present in yourself. Don't look so hard. When you stop looking and you stop focusing out there and you're focusing in, it opens up that space for the universe to come in and start making those connections for you. And really check the answers you're getting. If it's one that you really, really want, put it back. That's not the one that you need right now. It's probably not the universe giving it to you.
Yeah, that
I
makes
hope that
sense.
makes sense. Like, I hope
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I teach too, like with meditation, it's bringing yourself into that present moment, being aware of your inner awareness and just holding that open awareness without
Right.
necessarily actively thinking about other things, but just being the observer. Like I am
Right.
observing and being aware. And it's that space often that just allows the information to come in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then you had also mentioned, and we had also talked about Tyler Henry, and we had talked about distraction. So I'm going to bring it in.
I love.
Um, you were talking about how it's important to kind of distract yourself so that you can allow the information to come through. And we talked a little bit about Tyler Henry, and what he does is essentially kind of scribbles to keep
Right.
himself like focused so that he can you
Absolutely.
talk more about, because I know you do
I
this, right?
I do. And the thing is, I think it's a really another big part of doing this work. You have to be ready to learn and unlearn and relearn and unlearn over and over again. Because
Mm,
20 years ago, I didn't use a sketchbook. I didn't start using a sketchbook till probably like a handful of years ago because that's what worked for me now. That didn't work
mhm.
for me then. But yes, again, it's giving your hands and your body a way to focus on something else so your mind can open up. I show it on like my social media stuff all the time, but I have a dear friend of mine that hand paints journals for me,
Oh,
and I
nice.
just love her. And what they're literally just like blank pages inside.
Mhm.
And I don't know if everybody on the other side has like ADD or what it is, but it's a way to keep all our thoughts together.
Yeah.
So I will scribble and scratch a lot. And it always fascinates me because every page is a direct reflection of them. And it shows you how different
Mm.
we all are, right? So this is what it'll normally look like when we get
Mhm.
done.
Mhm.
Some look like that. Some look like that. And they're all very different. And I think it's really interesting to me just how different we all are. And it just shows you as souls, like some are super uniformed and it's all like what comes through, right? But it's a way to
Interesting.
distract your body, keep your body busy over here, and it opens up your third eye. It opens up the outer part, that we are.
I'm curious, do you think that the different scribbles could have something to do with that you are aligning with their frequency and that the scribble is the
Possibly.
movement of like their particular frequency?
Very possible. I'd never thought about it. I'm fascinated. There's a couple mediums that will sketch out who they're seeing while
Mm.
they like do readings, and I can't do that. Like my brain, I'm not artistically inclined, but I never thought about it that way. It could be. It very much could be. I think that's really cool. I'll have to sit on that.
Yeah,
That's
let
kind
me
of
know.
cool.
Let me know. I'd be really curious because this is the first thing that came into my awareness is that as you're scribbling, it's like you're connecting in with them, and then maybe the scribble is their
What
wave
their frequency looks
frequency.
like.
Yeah,
Now we've
yeah.
had where like after I'm done, I'll take a picture and I'll send it to them or I'll pull it out and I'll mail it to them or they can take it with them. And then they'll have it for a few days and like my client will and they'll bring it back. They're like, "Do you see this name that's written in here?" And I'm like, "I didn't, but I do now." She's like, "That's so and so's name or that's my dog's name or whatever." And I'm like, "Wow, that's kind of cool. I love that. That's news to me." And I think that's super fun. I think that's super cool. But
That's
yeah, I'd
really
never
cool.
thought about that. That's really cool. I like that
Yeah, I
because they're
gotta be
all
really
very
curious.
unique. There is no two the same at all. And I'm always
Hmm.
fascinated with it.
Nice. So, do you have any like tips for people who are developing their energetic senses, their psychic abilities, and like ways that maybe you've like strengthened your own abilities and things that might be useful to others?
Um, I think really checking yourself is super key because again,
Mm-hmm.
it goes back to that ego and human of wanting an answer and wanting to be able to connect and wanting to be able to do this. So that's really big. Be willing to check yourself and
Mm-hmm.
be like, okay, maybe that's not. Maybe I overheard somebody talking about it and now I've put it in my head. This is what I'm seeing. So make sure you're checking yourself and being
Mm-hmm.
honest.
Mm-hmm.
A really cool exercise that I was taught years ago. Was if you have like a vision or an intuition of some sort, write it down. This may sound a bit extra, but I promise it's a really cool exercise that works.
Mm-hmm.
Write it
Mm-hmm.
down, fold it up, put it in an envelope, seal that envelope, and mail it to yourself. Like physically put it in the mailbox with a stamp, mail it to yourself. And when it comes back, it'll have a timestamp on it. It'll have that date stamped on it. Tuck it away. So when it does happen, whenever that thing is that you wrote down, you can go back into your letter you wrote to yourself, see what it was, see what happened, and now you're starting to get a window of time of how far in advance you're seeing things. So when it starts happening,
Interesting.
and then you can't like lie to yourself because sometimes humans we will like tell ourselves something, but this way it's time stamped. You know when it happened. You can't like, oh yeah, well I thought that was going to happen, but I didn't say anything.
Right. You know
You know,
exactly when you thought
like, no,
that.
I really did
Yeah.
think about it. And
Mm-hmm.
after a few times of this happening, you're going to start seeing the window in advance that you see things or how you can interpret them.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is the color that came up when I had this feeling. And now this is the color that came up again when I had this feeling. And you'll start making those connections.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I see a white balloon coming to me, it means somebody's birthday is here. If I see a gold one, it's an anniversary. If
Mm-hmm.
I see like specific colors, if like I see the number 5, it's either the 5th, February, March, April, May, or the 5th day of the week, which to me is Friday. So if
Mm-hmm.
I see the number 5, it's going to be one of those 3 things, and then we'll time it,
Mm.
and we'll take it with another symbol I get, and we put them together. So doing that's a really cool exercise that you physically are checking yourself, and you can really start developing notes and seeing like the time and the pattern that you see things in. It's kind of neat. I mean, it's a cool way to really keep a real track of what you're doing and growing it at the same time.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, and like, so when I help people to develop their abilities, like I break it down. Like I love those tools that you just shared because this is the things that I've not shared at all ever, and so I think this is going to be really helpful for the audience. Usually, when I help people, it's just through like observing like their own abilities, and I find that like just the sheer process of observing, like, oh, that's it. It's
Right,
happening right
right.
now, and then validating it. Yes,
Yeah,
that really was
right.
that,
That
right?
really was
Yeah,
that.
that really was
Absolutely.
that. And then take action on that
Absolutely.
experience that you had. But, I haven't spent a lot of time like, like putting in like what you just said about the mailing it. I mean, that is like so useful because then you will immediately know when you were
Right.
thinking that particular thing, and you'll have that validation with that in a
And the
physical, tangible
validation is
sense.
key. It's
Yeah.
super important. And like I will have clients that'll send me like an email the next day or whatever, a couple months down the road, like you said this was going to happen, and holy shit, it happened. And no matter how many times like no matter how many years I've done this for years, no matter how many years I've done this, when I get that, I'm like, that's awesome. I'm so glad. Like it makes sense. Now, if you want something that's really tangible, I was taught how to do bone readings probably about 15, 16 years ago. Like it's a
Mm.
really old art. It's a very tricky art, so it takes a lot of work. But stuff like tarot readings and runes and stuff like that, you can do that. But try not to hang on so tight to like the little book that comes with them. Right. Like the bone readings I was taught by a woman that was a practitioner that was taught it years ago in a different country, and she came here. She taught
Mhm.
it to me, and that's how we passed it on. But for like tarot readings and that kind of stuff, when we host tarot reading workshops, I'm like, we're about to get very, very serious with your deck. Like, bring your deck in. It's great. Now take that book and throw it in the trash. No, like literally, check in the
Mm.
trash. We're done with it. That's not your interpretation. That's their interpretation. You have to get an intimate connection, and as like you pick out this card, like what do you feel around it? Do you like connect it to your grandfather or your mom or a bad thing that happened in high school or whatever? And no matter what that book says, when that card comes up, that's going to represent what it is. Like that's going to the energy around it is what's going to, that's the message you're supposed to be sharing. So don't be afraid to like get rid of the guides that come with stuff like that. Like be willing to shake it up a little
I
bit and
love
get really
that.
intimate connection with them for
I
sure.
love that. And then create your own symbolism. That's one of the things that I talk about too, with like creating your own symbol dictionary, because the universe is trying to communicate with you or your guides or whatever, through these symbols.
Yes.
But like, you look at the other symbol dictionaries like out there, and, like I always say, like one person, may react to a snake in one way, another person's going to
Yes.
react to a snake in another way. Like,
Right.
and so you really got to think about like what that thing is for you. But I love the way that you're talking about like the oracle cards and tarot cards, and like just creating like your own relationship with each of those images from the start,
From
so
the
that
start.
each of those images means something significant to you, so that each
Right.
time that you see that, it'll be your own
Yes.
significance, which I think is fantastic.
Absolutely.
I have never heard that before,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
and I mean, I've heard that, you want to make it your own, but never from the start. And I
You've got to do it
love
from the
that.
start. So
Yeah.
when we had three different workshops for tarots, and the first one was like you can bring your deck in, we're going to work with what you got, just a very basic thing, right? But
Mhm.
if you wanted to dive in, I we had these really really cool like cards, these blank playing cards is what they were. They just had like a border on the outside, and every week we would create a new tarot card. Like this is what we're going to work on.
Ooh,
So everything about this card was absolutely completely you. Everything is completely you, and it really has a really cool connection that nobody else is going to have.
I
And I
love
just think
that.
it's really really important. It really is. And if that's the kind of art you want to do, be open to it. And there's so many cool types of divination out there. It's endless. Like scrying is wild. There's so many things you can
Yeah,
do.
well, you could use anything. I mean, there's
Anything.
not a single
Anything.
thing that you couldn't use
Anything.
as a
Right.
source for receiving that
Right.
information.
Yep, and I mean it
So,
all started with things like ink and bones, and it's wild, and but it's ancient. It's a beautiful sacred art, and if it's something you want to dive into, just try it out. There's so many cool ways to do it. I do not just say jumping into mirror scrying. I wouldn't do that. That's about the only one I'm like, don't do that. That's you have to sit on that for a while, and that can open up a lot. But
mm.
besides mirror scrying, I think everything else is just dive in, see what, just try it. Just try it.
Mhm,
It'll be fun.
mhm, mhm. And so with the mirror scrying, you say that it's gonna open
That's
up a
heavy.
lot. What do you mean by that?
That's heavy.
Mhm,
It's super heavy. It requires you to normally be in a pitch black room. You have a candle burning and you're staring into this black mirror. And the things that you will start seeing it can be very intimidating. So if it's your first
mm,
time wanting to learn a divination or scrying of some sort, don't just jump in the deep end. Like start off something
right,
simple. Use like pendulums, use tarot, stuff like that that you can like sit down and be like, okay, I'm done. A lot of the
right,
times people will jump into stuff like mirror scrying and they feel almost stuck. Like
mm,
we don't want that. But anytime you practice any sort of divination or scrying, have what I call as like a power piece, have like a stone or a piece of wood or a coin or something you can physically grab to like bring you back in. Does that make
mhm.
sense? Like
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
let me just hold that for a minute and it'll kind of bring you back in.
Something that's gonna keep you, like,
Yeah.
grounded and
Grounded
focused.
in, right?
And then do you usually like, clearly you're calling in, like, information and stuff. Do
Mhm.
you have a process of, like, opening into the divination process and then a process of closing out of the divination process?
I think I did for years when I first started. I mean,
Mhm,
it's a very sacred space. I kind of say like a little prayer to myself to kind of open things up, but it's kind of more internal.
mhm,
And
mhm.
whenever I'm reading for somebody, I have like a little quick spew I kind of like throw out, like just explaining my process. And to me, that's me working into it. It's
Right.
about but I think I've just done it for so long that it just kind of pops up now. I will be sitting there and I can feel something getting ready to happen or feel somebody coming in. It's like we're out at a restaurant and my partner, my kid will look at me and be like, you feel it, don't you? And I'm like, yeah, we're
Yeah,
just not going to talk about it right now. He can stay
yeah.
over there. But I don't know, but I'm a firm believer the space is sacred, so make sure you treat it accordingly. Just
Right.
make sure you treat it
And
accordingly.
and so what I'm understanding is the process that you're doing through when you're opening or closing is
Mm-hmm.
essentially just allowing yourself the process of connecting in. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever the thing is, the ritual that you have to do, it's creating that sacred space and connecting in. So the more that you get used to it, the faster it's going to go,
It just
because
kind of
then you
happens,
just
yeah.
have the intention of like, oh, I'm going to
Right.
connect in, and boom, it starts
It
happening.
just starts happening.
Yeah.
Especially with people who are just trying to like dip their toes in it, and when I say dip your toes in, I mean like 5, 10 years in. Like you can take a
Mm-hmm.
while to like dip your toes in. So make sure you're allowing yourself the steps, whatever that may look like to you, to go in and then to back out. Because sometimes you'll just try to wrap things up, and then you'll catch yourself still hung up in that space. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
hours later.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's the intention. Everything's about intention. Everything
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, totally. I don't want to go too much longer, but I do have like a couple more questions. I mean, I
You're
could go
good.
on with you for like days.
We
This
can do
is
this
so much
again. It's
fun.
fun. We'll just
We'll
do
have
this
to do it
another day.
again. But
Yeah.
I'm really curious. I wanted to touch about ghosts real fast, because I know that
Okay.
like death, and ghosts and all these things can be like something that is really scary for people, and they don't, they have this kind of different relationship with these words,
Mhm.
like what is a ghost? Is a ghost real? And all these things. And, you and I have very similar perspectives about this, and like what ghosts really are, but I'd be curious to know like your perspective on all of this, so that people can understand this in a way that maybe brings them more comfort.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a firm believer that ghosts are real. Absolutely. I think you can call them spirits, you can call whatever you want, but they are absolutely 1,000% real. The problem is that Hollywood has ruined it. So
Yeah.
we go in thinking like this cool sheeted figure is going to walk out. Like, no, I've never seen that in my life.
Not unless they have a
Like,
sense of humor, right?
unless, and they almost always do have a great sense of humor. Like
Yeah.
when I say I see dead people, they literally look like they're living to me. If
Right.
a dead zombie looking thing walked across here, I would scream like a little girl and go like all Walking Dead on it. I do not
Mm-hmm.
play that game. That's not what it looks like. I cannot count how many times I've had people be like, I really want a reading, but it really freaks me out. I'm like, but why?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a scaredy cat. Like, I do not do scary movies. That's a big nope at my house. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
big chicken. So if I'm not scared, I promise you don't need to be scared. And I always, that's one reason why I started like accepting who I was a long time ago. And I quit trying to dress the way that everybody in my line of work dressed and talk the way they
Mm.
did. Because when I'm showing up just as who I am and I embrace my awkward, weird, geeky self, everybody else is like, okay, if this little weird nerd isn't scared, I'm not going to be scared. It's fine. And everybody calms down. But it really is. I think it's incredible work, and it's good scientific work when we have a good paranormal investigator, right? Because
Mm.
I love the science behind it. It's a lovely blend between science and esoteric and the sacred work that is. But ghosts are absolutely real. They are not scary. They're not. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are bad, negative things out there, but it's nowhere near like what clickbait will make you believe is real. Like
Yeah.
there are demons out there, absolutely 1,000%, but they are not in every house that makes a weird noise. I promise.
Yeah,
Not
no,
it.
totally. And you're not
Um,
going to attract those things because energetically you're not in that same resonance with it.
you're
So
not.
most
It's
people
not.
are like, "Oh my God, if I'm going to attract all these things and I'm so afraid or whatever." And I'm like,
Absolutely
you
not.
would have to be in a really dark like part of your life to
You have to be ready
even
to go in
show
looking for
up.
it. Like you
Right?
gotta go looking for it.
Like,
Right.
yeah, because you're not going to like vibrate at the same frequency. It's like I always
Right.
explain it like in a level thing, right? If your frequency is vibing like way up here, and the energetic things, the things that you're worried about are like vibing way down here, you're not going to
Right.
meet at the same
Right.
level,
And I
you know?
promise, like, and anything that has ever been demonic is not human, has never been human. So
Yeah.
you can have a negative spirit, it's not going to hurt you. You're going to hurt
Yeah.
yourself way before that thing does. I promise. Like I said, I don't do scary movies like The Conjuring, all that crap. Like if it's real, I'll watch it. I adore John Zaffis with my whole entire being. He's one of the sweetest. He's one of the sweetest men you'll ever meet in your whole life. He's such a sweetheart. But if it's like a made up scary thing, I'm not watching that crap. Like
Yeah,
we
you
don't do
don't
that
need
here.
to like put that
Don't
stuff
let
in
it
your
freak you out.
brain. Yeah, yeah,
Don't let
yeah.
it freak you out. It's not.
Yeah.
I promise we will laugh during a session way more than we will be freaked out.
Mhm.
I'm always like, holy shit, did that just happen? At least once in every session, because
Mhm.
it just blows me away that how the universe works. If it was scary, I wouldn't do it. So if anybody's curious how it works, they can shoot me a message anytime, and I'll be like, no, really, we're gonna like chug an iced coffee and talk about the people that you care about, and they're gonna make jokes about you the whole time. I
Yeah, and
promise
that's
you,
the
that's
thing
what it's
too.
like.
Like, yeah, ghosts are just like us,
Yep,
but without their physical body, you know? And
absolutely,
so like we're
absolutely.
going to eventually, like if we decide to hang out in the physical plane and kind of
Yeah,
whatever, chill,
you have to
then
go look for it.
we
Yeah,
would be that, you know? And
absolutely.
so like just remember that those people out there that you might be perceiving as ghosts are somebody's loved ones, you know?
Absolutely. And we talk about that a lot. If we go on a paranormal investigation, you don't have to do these like big scary things. Like people ask like the same weird questions at paranormal investigations. I'm like, let's just say you were sitting here talking to a friend of yours. Are you going to ask them that question? If
Mm,
not, don't ask the spirit that question because you sound
right?
really weird. Like you're being
Yeah.
extra. Don't do that. Like just keep it simple. Talk to them like you're talking to a friend, and I promise it's much better and it'll make your experience better. And if you if you're getting close to something that has a negative energy, you're going to feel it way before you get there.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
promise. You're not going to walk in and unwittingly like walk into something absolutely very scary and dangerous. You're going to know
Yeah.
before you get there. You'll feel
Yeah.
it. Like your soul will be like, let's make a different plan. I promise
Mhm.
it will. I promise.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience, like as we're closing out? I mean, of course, I also want you to share a little bit more about like the things that you offer and about your, I don't know if you offer that journal, you know, to the public or only
It
to your
No,
clients.
it'll be printed. I We want to say May. It was supposed to be
Okay.
printed in the fall, but as soon as it will, it'll be on our website and all the things.
Okay.
All
But
the
yeah,
things.
anything, any kind of closing like thoughts that you have for the audience, as well as just any offers and what you do, and if you want to share that as well.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, so this has been so much fun. I could talk to you all day. We'll have to
Yeah,
do this again
totally. We'll
because
have to
we
do
could
it
just
again.
talk all day.
I know. I could go on
But
for another hour easy, but I'm like, well, it's already
absolutely,
been like 2 hours, I think.
absolutely, it's totally fine. Um, just always, no matter how famous somebody is, no matter how many whatever, trust your instinct. Your instinct is the number one best guide you will ever have in this lifetime. Absolutely. So always make sure your instinct, no matter what it is, listen to that little voice for just a minute. I promise you, it's the best guide you're going to have. As far as like my services, we have clients all over the world. So I don't care where you're at. We do virtual sessions a lot of the time because, technology is a thing. And I don't fly across the world for my clients. I do travel. We have expos coming up. But if you want a session, we do mediumship, we do psychic stuff. We're about to do an online grief day camp, is what I call it. It's like a 2-hour day camp where you can come in and talk about your loved ones. We talk about processing grief. Like we do all the things. We're on all the social media stuff to hear about all the things we're doing. But if you want to do a reading, we offer like mediumship psychic. It can be in person, it can be virtual. I always want my clients to be comfortable. So if you don't want to use a camera and you want to use a phone call, we can do it that way. If you want to make it for an hour or 3 hours, I don't care. We do groups, we do one on one, whatever you want. We always try to meet people where they're at. You know what I mean? Spiritually. So whatever it is you're looking for, we make it happen. I have an incredible assistant that does all my emails. So if you email them, I do not know who I am meeting until I sit down with them. Um, Often somebody will email and be like, oh, my mom died of this on this day, and I really want to connect with her. Well, now anything I say to you about your mom, you already told me. So I have an
Right.
assistant that does everything. So if you schedule a session, I don't know it until I'm sitting down and looking at your face.
Hmm.
So there's no way to research you. There's no anything. And go in being a healthy skeptic. You can be a skeptical believer. I want you to come in being a skeptic. And that's
Yeah.
totally okay. It's totally okay.
Oh, I
I
love that.
encourage it. I encourage it.
Yeah. Oh, same. You know, I'm all about don't believe what I'm saying. Like, find it out for
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Like, I'm just telling you the things that I understand and have figured out, and I want you, you know,
Yeah.
to figure these things out for yourself too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Be a healthy skeptic. I'm good with a good
Yeah.
skeptic.
Well, I love that. Well, I can't tell you, like, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining me today. This has been so amazing,
So much fun.
and I am looking forward to the next time that we talk, because it's going to be another couple hours of good
Totally
juicy
fine.
stuff.
Totally fine. I'm excited. Anytime. It has been so much fun. I really have loved talking to you. We could do this all day. It'll be
I
fun.
know, right? Yeah,
So
I'm looking
fun.
at the clock, like, oh my god.
My bad. Yep. Like I didn't realize 2 hours have gone by, but that's okay. It works
Yeah.
out. It works out.
Oh, well, thank you so much for everything.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and just so you know, audience, I'm going to put all of her contact information below, and so that you can reach her through those ways, and her website, so that when she does get the workbook together, that it'll be there. And I highly encourage you check out that workbook, because I know I'm going to. And you know,
Excited.
there's so many different like ways that we experience like grief and those types of feelings, that I think that it'd be valuable for everybody, you
Absolutely.
know? So absolutely.
I'm so excited. It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, well, you know, I think it's awesome. So thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I hope you have a great day.
You too.